Thank you. Who's ready for a journey? Most of my decks are kind of journey decks. I take you along for the ride. We're going to explore what I learned building a tool, right? So the bulk data export is something that I got super stoked on a year and a half ago because I was part of the small team that developed that tool with Google. They got a lot of insight from a small group of SEOs to help them develop the tool. I hadn't really worked with it a lot, and I've always had it in the back of my mind as something that I wanted to explore and work with more deeply. And I also had built a product called Branch Explorer, which uses Google Search Console data coming out of the API. And it had some limitations because it was only working with the web search type, and it was only gathering 50,000 rows of data per day. And I always wanted to take Branch Explorer and marry it together with this pipeline. And so what I wanted to do, why is... I know I gave him the right file. That's the best thing that's ever happened. So what I wanted to do was to marry the two together, and I wanted to build a really badass tool that see, the thing that's cool about the bulk data export pipeline is that Google handles all the engineering for you. They push all the data for you up into the cloud, and that makes it super easy from an engineering perspective. And I wanted to utilize that data and push it into Branch Explorer, which is a custom view of data. And what y'all are gonna get out of this is actually your own free Branch Explorer tool and your own data pipelines that you can use yourselves to look at Search Console data at scale. Super badass, right? And I love kangaroos. That's not my slide. Someone asked me why it's hard. I can't believe this. I'm being broadcast to YouTube. So I just want to say hi to Joy Hawkins, who's probably watching this right now, and I'm hoping that Marie Haynes is also watching this because she gets a wicked call out. And I also want to take an opportunity here to have you guys take some notes. This next piece is not part of my deck, but I want you to write down these 3 words as the most important thing you're going to learn at this conference. Make me smarter. I want all of us to embrace those 3 words as we make our way throughout the world. There have been plenty times today and yesterday where I've been completely blown away by what I'm seeing on stage, and I've felt less than, not as smart as, not as experienced as. Has anyone felt that way? We're all on a journey together, right? And this is my knowledge, right? And when I watched Kristen Tinsky talk today, I was feeling like, oh my God, like her knowledge is so much bigger than mine. But the thing is that for all of us, all of our sets of knowledge are tangential and overlapping. So like, just keep in mind as you're making your way and as you're on your journey learning all of this stuff, like if your boss sent you here to learn tech SEO in a conference, right? Like, it's really hard to learn all this stuff, and you just have to commit yourself to the journey of learning.
While they figure it out, can I ask you a couple questions?
Please do.
So, you also have an SEO community, which I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
How would you recommend people getting involved in that?
Okay, so the SEOcommunity.com, right? If you go to that website, you'll see that there's a page called Apply, and you apply with your name, email, and your LinkedIn profile. That helps us vet that you're a real human being, which is kind of important. There are about 3,200 other marketers. A lot of folks who are here are members and moderators. Mike's a moderator of our testing channel. Kristen's a moderator of our AI for SEO channel. And I think it's an amazing place. I took a huge amount of inspiration for what Arij did with Women in Tech SEO. And I just thought that when Twitter fell apart, I really wanted to not have to look for my friends, right? Like I didn't want to do Mastodon, I didn't want to do Blue Sky, I didn't know where to look, and Slack just felt like the smartest way to go.
Okay. And like I said, you've done so many videos with agency automators and so on. And there's people in here, when we talk about automation, it's like, it's cool, but they don't know where to start. And I know you're going to talk about that to some degree here.
Yeah.
But if you're someone coming into this for the first time,
yeah.
where would you recommend that they start?
AppScript. Google Sheets functions to AppScript to JavaScript. Or you could take an alternate path, which goes AppScript to Python. Python is a much easier language to learn than JavaScript. Who's afraid of learning Python? Anyone? Does it sound hard? Does it sound like only smart people do it? It is literally the easiest programming language to learn, period. Like the things that are hard about it are like managing indentations, like how many spaces do I put, right? And then also getting packages to work together.
Yeah, of course. But from my perspective, anyone can code now because of large language models, right? As long as you can describe what you want, it's going to give you some okay code, and if it breaks, then you just put the error in, and then it fixes it.
Yeah, except for, like, and I'm going to get into that in the deck, but, like, I basically built a data pipeline, and I only used AI to build it. And I wanted to know if it was possible to build software applications just using, do you guys want my laptop?
We got it.
Okay.
I don't believe you.
I think they deleted my deck. I think they by accident deleted it. But yeah, like what I found was that when I built something that was creating JavaScript, it was throwing natural language into the code. So instead of like doing ampersand to equal A and B, it would say A and then the word and B, and I was just feeling, and I threw that into itself to fix it, and it couldn't figure out the error. That was Chat. That was Claude. No, that was Chat GPT 4.0.
So people think that Claude Sonnet is like the best one for writing code.
I enjoy it a lot, and I use it with Cursor, and I use it with another tool called Aider, AIDER. We're going to talk about that as we go. This is the first time I've ever had a deck completely disappear.
It's there. It's the combination of PowerPoint, Adobe PDFs, and Google Slides.
Oh.
And Windows also.
Oh, Windows, yeah.
Have we solved the problem, though? All right, cool.
I could tell.
How you doing, Noah?
I'm good. I'm having fun.
Yeah. You know, I actually like when things go wrong because it's like you get the opportunity to see what you can do in the moment. So I think we're good now, though. So I'm gonna try this again. Everybody, make some noise for Noah Lerner, yo.
This is amazing. Okay, so we're going to go on a journey. I'm going to share all kinds of stuff that I learned building a really cool tool that you guys will get access to for free. I'm going to share a ton of lessons learned. I'm also going to share a couple custom GPTs that I built for you. Keep in mind, all of the slides are available to you, so you're going to have them all after, so you don't have to like race, because I have a whole bunch of QR codes that are flashing up on screen, but you can scan them, you know, when you get back wherever you're going. Okay, so what's the mashup? We're building something with the GSC Bulk Export, and we're building something with Explorer. Explorer is a Looker Studio-based product that we built that allows you to look at Search Console data at scale. It's got all kinds of time series visualizations, tables. It'll allow you to see stuff that you haven't seen before, and we only built it with this mashup using AI. Who knows Dave Sotomano? I saw him speak at Tech SEO Boost in 2019, and he blew me away. And he blew me away because he was like the guy on stage talking about JavaScript. And I think he even dropped the words, "fuck Python," in his deck, which I thought was amazing. And he's been a hero of mine, a mentor, collaborator for a super long time. So when I got the opportunity to speak here, we had a call together, and I said, hey, Dave, I'm thinking about building this thing. What do you think? And he said, oh, dude, it's awesome. It's amazing. You should totally do it. Everybody's going to eat it up. It's going to be so cool. And then he said this, within 6 months, this was 2 months ago, I promise you anyone can build anything with an LLM. Let's see if he's right. And when he said that, I thought he was totally crazy, because if you think about the technology adoption curve, it looks a lot like this. I feel like this is Kristen, people like Kristen, this is me, this is a whole bunch of us in the room, this is generalist folk doing marketing, these are consumers, these are our parents, right? Okay. And so when Dave said anyone could build anything, I thought he was saying that this person could build something within 6 months. And that's why I thought he was super crazy. Okay. And what do we know about the bulk export? What is it? Well, it's basically 3 things. There's 3 tables that get pushed up into BigQuery. The first one's called the export log. Second one is the URL impression table. Third one is the site level data. Site level data is where it's just aggregating all the metrics for you at the query level. The URL impression table is aggregating everything at the combination of query and page, and it's giving you all kinds of other stuff too, which we'll get into. These are the kinds of fields that are available inside the bulk export. Again, you're going to get access to this in the slide. This is coming straight out of BigQuery. If you haven't seen this before, it's pretty cool. Specifically, that field is anonymized query. Everybody's always super pissed about what gets sampled, right? This gives you the visibility to be able to see which pages are getting anonymized queries. When I looked at our own data, what I saw was that all of the content that we were building about how to use Google user interfaces, how to use Google products, those pages had ridiculous quantities of anonymized queries. It was almost like Google didn't want us to know how to compete with them in the SERPs, was how I was thinking about it. But also, look at all these Boolean fields. We've got, is it a top stories? Is it a blue link? Is it a job listing? Job details? Is it an action? Is it an events listing? Is it an AMP? Is it video? Is it organic shopping? Who does e-commerce? Who would like to have that level of visibility about their data, right? So these are the kinds of things that are available to you when you start working with the bulk export. You've probably heard that it's expensive, right? Tons of data, it's really expensive. We'll get into that. As getting ready for the build of this, I didn't work with the site impression table at all. I just didn't have enough time to do it. We've already talked about all of the volume of data, but this is why there's so much. You get data for all countries. So all your data is segregated by country. It's segregated by all of the devices. It's segregated by all of the search types. It's segregated by all the search appearances, which were those Boolean fields that I shared in the last slide. It's also giving you information about anonymous queries, and there's no row limits. Let's say you're CNN.com or you're Reddit. It's no longer 50,000 rows per day. It's as much as you want. The fire hose is wide open. So for enterprise sites, it's super, super interesting. What about a small site? Is it interesting then too? Yes, and we'll get into that. Okay, so all search types. So we get Discover, Google News, we get image type, we get video, we get web. Super dope. And I was also super stoked to build this because I felt like there just weren't any tools that I was aware of. That's why I have the bracket around the many piece. There just weren't a lot of tools for specifically looking at data that was coming out of the bulk export. And with Explorer, these are the types of things that we do on top of the data coming out of Search Console to make it a lot easier to work with. So we have like your position with the bulk export. They're giving you position as a sum. They're not giving it to you as an average position, which is super annoying. You have to do the math yourself to calculate, the sum of position by the number of impressions to get to an average position. So we do that math for you. Click-through rate, full path, which is giving you almost like the Google Analytics view of your URL. We're also breaking it up into subdirectories, so we're giving you insights as subdirectory level 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you have a site that has a whole bunch of structure, you're going to really dig it. We're also giving you all kinds of information around funnel stages. And the thing that I think you're going to really dig is you can set the search terms in the tool that we give you that align with your different funnel stages, which is super badass. Let's see. So you can see brand versus non-brand, funnel stage. You can see if a URL happens to be something that has UTM parameters that align with GBP stuff, which is super useful. And you can build URL segments. Has anyone ever used Botify? So in Botify, you've got a pretty cool way of doing segmentation of URLs using whatever pattern you want. I'm not positive, but I think they do it with a case statement. And what that means is that a page can be A or it can be B, but it can't be both. Boom. We can have pages be both. So a page could be a Nike page because it has Nike in the URL, and it could be a product detail page because it has product in the string, and it could be a specific collection because it has shoes in it, right? So you can have one page be all kinds of different segments, which is pretty rad. The other thing that allows you to do is to see directories, pages, and queries that are driving change on our website. I'm not telling you how cool this is because there's so much data. It's not about the volume of data. It's about having a tool that can help you get efficiently from the haystack down to the needle. And that's why I've always been super jacked about Explorer, because I felt like it was the best tool that I'd seen that enabled me to do it. And because the data is all in BigQuery, if you've ever used Looker Studio and you've used native connectors and you're like, this sucks, it's super slow, especially if you have to blend data together, you're going to love using it because of how fast it is. Okay, so I'm going to build something with AI. What could possibly go wrong, right? Has anyone ever struggled with Chat GPT? Okay, so here's my approach to building tools. I've learned a lot talking to a lot of folks in the room about how to do stuff. I generally focus on this sweet spot in the Venn diagram. I'm looking for stuff that's fast to build, easy to code, and super cheap to own, hopefully free. So I build on the Google Cloud infrastructure generally. I always focus on painkillers, not vitamins. Any aspiring product people in the room? And you've ever thought to yourself like, hey, it'd be really cool if I could show blah, blah, blah? That's a vitamin. A painkiller is, how do I save 100 hours for my agency this month, right? Like that's the stuff that I always focus on. They also help us as an agency smooth out capacity challenges. As we grow and scale, this helps us kind of deal with those capacity changes. Last year, we had a whole bunch of folks that went out on paternity and maternity leave. We found that all the automations that we put in place helped us deal with that really, really well. They also help us be really, really sticky with our clients. When we can solve problems for our clients in ways that other people can't, we've got a huge leg up. And I don't know if you've heard about Sterling Sky, but we're in the local space, and we're generally known as kind of the premier local agency in North America. This is the stack that I use. I started with Google Apps Script. I was talking with Mike about that. How do you go backwards? It's not going backwards. Okay. I started with Google Apps Script, and then from there, I actually had an agency automators with Dave Sotomano where he taught me how to do Cloud Functions, and I thought it was the coolest thing because Cloud Functions allow you to have 1 million invocations for free per month. I was like, holy shit, that's such a big number. Like I can do so many cool things with that. And I work with APIs. I also use Firestore specifically to manage state. And that's like storing client variables, storing information that I need to read and write a lot. And I also use BigQuery like crazy and Looker Studio for visualization. To me, if you're trying to figure out what your tech stack should look like, I think this is a great place to start. You could totally get rid of Firestore and use Postgres as another database tech there, but I think this is a great great way to think about things. When I used to build, I built exclusively in VS Code for 2 to 4 years. And when Copilot came out, I was super, super jacked. When you're thinking about automation and you're thinking about AI in coding, Copilot is the best way to dip your toes in. And the reason why is that when you're working with Copilot, it's basically like you'll start typing and it'll finish the line of code for you. You hit tab and you just move on. And so it's not like ChatGPT where you're like saying, hey, build me a whole function that does X, and it spits out 400 lines of code and you have no idea what's broken. This gives you like a very limited way to get started. I loved it. I loved it, I loved it, I loved it. And then I went to Canada and I met Marie Haynes in person. I don't know if you've ever spent any time with her, but I had one of the most compelling come to Jesus talks I've ever had with any human ever, where she told me I was doing everything wrong and all I needed to do in life was learn more about AI and use it. And I was like, fuck you, Marie. And I went home all angry and I made some changes. I started to use ChatGPT at that point. This was in October of last year. And I started learning about all the things that have to do with this stuff. Okay, tokens. A token is a chunk of words or images or text. It's really small. It's like 4 characters in English. Each token is like 3/4 of a word, right? Context window, you're going to hear this all the time. A context window is basically a measurement of the size of information that can go in and out of a large language model. And as these technologies have improved, context windows have become larger. So when you build things, that's super important because it goes from, hey, I can build you a line of code like Copilot, to, hey, you can have your entire code repository inside that context window so the LLM knows everything about what you've built and what you're trying to build. And with OpenAI's ChatGPT, what we found was that the context window was 8,000 tokens. Sounds like a lot, right? It's like 500 words or 500, no. It's 6,000 words, which is a lot. So I built a whole bunch of custom GPTs. The first one that I built is probably the most useful. If you like to code and you want something super useful and you work in the Google Cloud stack, I strongly recommend, if you want a GPT to use, this one is the shit. I love StackBot. I use this almost every day in my work now. It allowed me to go from single line to building complete functions. And I thought it was super cool, so I kept going and I built a WordPress custom GPT. I didn't know anything about building anything in WordPress, believe it or not. And this tool allowed me to build short codes. It allowed me to build plugins. It helped me build all kinds of stuff. I even built this plugin called the Custom Taxonomy Grid Block. Has anyone ever built something with categories and you hate the standard layout and it's awful? This thing, in 2 days, I figured out how to build one. I built an AppScript GPT, which is awesome because I love AppScript. And anyone who's wanting to learn, like I said earlier, like AppScript is the easiest thing to learn other than Python. It's super well documented. It integrates with all kinds of Google tools, including Google Sheets. If you're trying to figure out the first step to building cool, useful stuff for the agency, the superpower duo would be AppScript plus Google Sheets. Okay, then I learned about Claude Sonnet 3.5, which is super cool, super powerful, huge context window, 25 times larger than ChatGPT. I was like, oh my God, I'm in. I pay for the pro plan, it's $20 a month, strongly recommend you do it. I got super excited about it because it has this feature called artifacts and projects, which I heard as custom, doing the same kind of thing as a custom GPT. I don't know, I'm not super into it. I mean, this was my take on it. The way it works is you have to manually upload your files into the tool, and I just felt like that whole process was super annoying, super slow, and I just felt like it was a total pain in the ass. And the reason why I didn't really dig it is it stopped me from doing the work. It stopped me from doing iterations, and speed of iteration is really, really, really the key, for me anyway. I've learned so much from everybody else here, and they all work differently, but this was, as I was learning to work with the tools, this was one of my big takeaways. I'd heard of this tool called Cursor from a guy named Eric Wu, and I jumped in with both feet. It's super easy if you use VS Code to move over to Cursor. You basically just export your settings out of VS Code and import them into Cursor. It takes 2 minutes. What's cool about it is it's basically VS Code, but it has AI built right into the tool. There's a free plan and a pro plan. Free limits how many different AI queries you can do per day. The pro plan is $20 a month. Totally signed me up all day long for that. I think it's just the coolest thing. Because it's using Claude Sonnet as its built-in model, it's got this huge context window, so it knows a ton about your code. I'm going to share some takeaways from doing this whole build. You're like, hey, where's the tool? Where's the tool? We'll get to that at the end. But I just wanted to share some of the lessons that I've learned. Again, like when I watched Kristen talk, like I was feeling imposter syndrome in a huge way. But I think these are good best practices to get started. I think when you're working with AI and you're working with LLMs and you're trying to code and build stuff, do not say, hey, I want to build this thing and do this. Describe what you're trying to do in the broadest terms possible. Describe what your end goals are, and then get the LLM to reframe back to you what you're trying to accomplish. What you're going to find is that when it summarizes that goal, it's either going to say something that aligns with how you think, or it's going to be wrong. And if it's wrong, you're going to iteratively communicate with it back and forth until you get the goal right. And then what you're going to find is that it's the time to then ask it to produce an architecture of the thing that you're trying to build. And again, iteratively talk with it to make sure that you have that all done. And then what you're going to do is ask the model to build what's called pseudocode, which to me is just like it talking about the code and describing it to you. And if you know what you're looking at and you and you then sort of look at the code, you'll know if they're on the right track or not. I have not done all of the cycles of frustration yet. We haven't gotten there. We're still trying to get the context right and understand what it's trying to produce. If you get the pseudocode right, you then ask it to actually code. And then you've basically gotten about 70% of the way there. And the last 30%, 20%, 10% is the most frustrating part of the experience. When I was building the tool that you guys are going to get, I was trying to get it to create a data pipeline using only SQL. And the reason I was trying to do that was that I had a pretty complex architecture beforehand. I had cloud functions and task queues and all kinds of infrastructure to support. Well, Google was already pushing all the data for me up into the cloud. And I was like, why can't I just do this with SQL? What I found was that last 20 to 30% was brutal. It was like 20 hours of going back and forth and back and forth. Okay, other lessons learned doing the build. With the bulk export, the epoch version field the epoch version field in the export log is really, really, really interesting. I'd never really thought about this before, but the epoch version basically tells you what version of the data is up in the table. So let's say Google puts data up in the table on day 1, and then they're like, oh shit, we have data quality issues, and they have to fix it and put it back up as epoch version number 1. That's really important. That told me, oh my God, I need that my data is not immutable. When you hear about an API, you might hear it described as mutable, which means the data changes. That's like Facebook data or ads conversion data. This told me that I had to pay attention to that, which I thought was really interesting. Bulk export data costs. Let's get into this because this is super, super interesting. When you go to the tools webpage, there's going to be a calculator at the bottom of the page that's going to help you think through this. Basically, what you're going to do is look at the data that's in your table and then divide it by the number of partitions. that basically tells you how many megabytes or gigabytes of data are going up into BigQuery every single day. And that's going to help you calculate how much the budget is. And yeah, I did use AI to build that tool on the webpage too, which was pretty cool. Here's the major downside of the bulk export. There is no backfill. It's just like GA data. Also, what you're going to find is that Dave was wrong. Dave was wrong. It's not something that I perceive anyway, that in 4 months is going to be something that all of us can just go build stuff. Like I build things for a living. That's my job. I'm like the director of innovation for Sterling Sky. And I found that it was hard. I found that it was really frustrating. And I found that almost that co-pilot way of working was an easier way intellectually to work. I could get stuff done probably faster, and understanding the wide world of possibilities, that's, I think, the sweet spot for AI, but like getting it done efficiently, it was just such a frustrating build. And when I talk about early adopters, really it's like a tolerance for pain, and I feel like you had to have just an enormous tolerance for pain to kind of work with it. That was my piece, and you really have to be ready to deal with risk. Okay. Also, just to give you all kinds of other insights, like models create all kinds of trash outputs. Like that was a key piece. I wanted to build my deck with AI too. After I'd already built the tool, I was like, hey, let's just build all my slides. I think this would be super fun if you want to see how AI goes wrong, by the way, if you want to see how to build slides with it. But this is the input. Like, hey, I want to build a 16:9 slide, because that's what Google Slides are, right? And I want it to look, I want it to have like a cool geometric pattern, blah, blah, blah. This is what it came out with. I just wanted a freaking slide that said building software is hard, right? 10 iterations later. And then it throws an error at me. It's like, you're generating images too quickly. To ensure the best experience for everyone, we have to rate limit you. It's like, assholes. Like, this doesn't work. We're going back and forth and back and forth. After more things, it's like, understood. Here's the goal. It told me what I wanted. It's like, the goal is to ensure a clean edge-to-edge geometric background with only text centered on the slide and no additional objects or distractions. It just could not get it. And then it throws this. At this stage, I recommend using a graphic design tool like Canva, Figma, or PowerPoint. Super. This was as close as I could get. And this was an hour in. And I kept saying, please make it lighter, please make it lighter, please make it lighter. And every step along the way, it would get darker and darker and darker. It was like, ugh. So, yeah, models lie. You know, I would say things like, hey, I want you to, using cursor, I would say, hey, I want you to put the code in my repository file tree. And it would say, I said, hey, can you put it there? And it's like, certainly, I'll create a new file called blah, 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 and I'll put it in this directory, and here's the content of the file. And I'm like, where's the code? I kept refreshing my repo, and there was no code. There was no file. And I'm like, do I not have the right permissions? Like, only VS Code has permissions on my files. 15 minutes later, it responds with, as an AI language model, I don't have direct access to your code base or file system. It was like, well then why'd you tell me that you built the file? So that's a major downside of building with cursor, by the way. If you want to have the tool output code directly for you and make code edits for you, cursor is not quite the way to go, and we'll get to another tool. But anyway, this was my feeling. Aider, A-I-D-E-R, Eric Wu again, came to the rescue, told me all about Aider. It's a Python tool. It uses whatever LLM you want to use. It'll create all your code for you. It'll create all the files for you. It'll edit files. It'll delete files. Anytime you ask it to do anything, it'll make a git commit for you on your behalf. If you don't like it, you can roll the code back with just a simple slash command. You just slash undo, and it undoes the commit for you, and you can try and try again, which is really, really good. I saw this trolling around Reddit a little bit after I'd already built my deck, which is great. There's 5 levels of different, this is a great slide for you to do exploration to figure out more tools, because you probably haven't heard of, like a lot of folks hadn't heard of Aider, and so they probably hadn't heard of any of the competitors either, right? But basically you're gonna go from Copilot Cursor, and then you're gonna use Aider, and then there's a whole bunch of Aider tools that are, and stuff that's like way, way more enterprisey. So they tend to lose a lot of context and they lose broken code. Mike asked me about, hey, you can just fix the error, right? I could not get my head wrapped around why it was throwing natural language into code. I just couldn't figure that out, and it happens all the time. And that one piece is why I'm not afraid of it taking all of our jobs. Because if it can't produce valid code, and it, after 12 iterations, like, people are not going to adopt the technology that's broken. Like, it's just not quite good enough. Okay, so the tool that I built, it's going to have a pretty cool sign-up page. You're not signing up, you're not giving me information, but it'll walk you through the whole setup page. AI built the whole thing, which was pretty rad. It built the neat pricing table down below. This is the link. If you do want to, for some reason, grab that QR code right now, you can set up your own data pipeline, which is super rad. It'll take about 20 to 30 minutes. This is me. I've loved hanging out with you guys today. I hope I brought enough energy post-lunch for everybody. Thanks a lot, y'all. Thank you.